Right now, millions of Americans are checking their bank accounts and noticing something different. If you're receiving Social Security, Supplemental Security Income, or Veterans Affairs benefits, the numbers on your monthly payment have changed, and there's a specific reason why. Under the current administration's policy directives, benefit adjustments are rolling out that directly impact how much money hits your account each month. This isn't speculation or rumor. These are documented changes happening to real payments for real people across all 50 states. Whether you've been receiving benefits for decades or just started this year, understanding exactly what's changing, when it's changing, and how much more you could be receiving is absolutely critical to your financial planning. We're talking about modifications to cost of living adjustments, potential policy shifts affecting payment schedules, and new executive orders that could influence your monthly income. The difference between knowing these details and missing them could mean hundreds or even thousands of dollars over the course of the year. So let's break down exactly what's happening with your money, what Trump's latest executive actions mean for your specific situation, and most importantly, what you need to do right now to ensure you're receiving every single dollar you're entitled to. Let me be completely transparent with you here, because I believe you deserve honesty more than anything else when it comes to your hard-earned benefits. As of right now, in November 2025, there's been a lot of talk circulating on social media, through email chains, and even in some news outlets about dramatic changes to Social Security, SSI, and VA payments under new executive orders. But here's what you actually need to know. Stripped of all the hype and confusion that's been floating around out there, the way Social Security works hasn't fundamentally changed overnight, and that's actually important to understand before we dive into what is genuinely happening with your payments. Social Security benefits are primarily adjusted through something called the Cost of Living Adjustment, or COLA, which happens every single year based on inflation calculations. The Social Security Administration looks at something called the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, and they use that data to determine whether benefits need to increase to keep pace with the rising cost of groceries, housing, healthcare, and everything else you're paying for in your daily life. This process has been in place for decades, and it's designed to protect your purchasing power so that the money you receive today can buy roughly the same amount of goods and services as it did when you first started receiving benefits. Now, when we talk about Trump's administration and changes to these payments, we need to separate what's actually within presidential authority and what requires congressional action, because there's been a tremendous amount of confusion about this distinction. The president cannot simply sign an executive order that permanently raises everyone's Social Security check by a specific dollar amount. That's not how the system is designed to work. Social Security is governed by federal law, and any permanent changes to benefit amounts, eligibility requirements, or the fundamental structure of the program require legislation to pass through both the House of Representatives and the Senate before landing on the president's desk for signature. What a president can do through executive action is influence how existing laws are implemented, interpreted, and enforced by the various federal agencies that handle these programs. Let's talk specifically about Social Security retirement and disability benefits first, because these affect the largest number of Americans. If you're receiving Social Security retirement benefits, your monthly payment is calculated based on your lifetime earnings record, specifically your highest 35 years of earnings. The Social Security Administration indexes these earnings to account for wage growth over time, then applies a formula to calculate your primary insurance amount. Once you're receiving benefits, the only regular increases come from those annual COLA adjustments we mentioned earlier. For 2025, there was a COLA increase that went into effect in January, and you should have seen that reflected in your payments starting at the beginning of this year. The percentage was determined back in October 2024 when the inflation data for the third quarter became available. and beneficiaries received notice of their new payment amounts in their My Social Security accounts and through mailed notices in December 2024. What's been happening more recently involves discussions and proposals about how to strengthen Social Security for the long term. Because, as you've probably heard, the Social Security Trust Fund is projected to face challenges in the coming years. There have been various proposals floating around Washington about eliminating taxes on Social Security benefits, raising the earnings cap for Social Security taxes, adjusting the retirement age, or changing how COLA is calculated. Some of these ideas have been discussed by Trump and other political figures, but discussing an idea and implementing it are two entirely different things. As of right now, the fundamental structure of Social Security remains the same as it has been, with the annual COLA adjustments continuing as scheduled according to the existing formula. Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, operates under somewhat different rules, even though it's also administered by the Social Security Administration. SSI is a needs-based program designed for individuals who are elderly, blind, or disabled, and who have limited income and resources. The federal benefit rate for SSI is set by law and also receives annual COLA adjustments just like Social Security. However, SSI has strict income and asset limits that haven't been adjusted in decades, and this is actually an area where there's been bipartisan discussion about making changes. The asset limit for SSI eligibility has been stuck at $2,000 for an individual and $3,000 for a couple since 1989, which means that inflation has essentially made these limits increasingly restrictive over time. There have been proposals to raise these limits significantly, perhaps to $10,000 for an individual and $20,000 for a couple, which would allow more people to qualify for SSI while still maintaining some savings for emergencies. This kind of change would require congressional action, but it's something that has gained support from advocates across the political spectrum because the current limits are widely recognized as outdated and unnecessarily punitive. Veterans Affairs benefits operate under yet another set of rules, and this is where things can get particularly complex because the VA administers dozens of different types of benefits and compensation programs. If you're receiving VA disability compensation, your monthly payment is based on your disability rating, which is determined by the VA based on medical evidence and examinations. These rates are also adjusted annually, typically taking effect on December 1st of each year. The adjustment isn't called COLA in the VA system, but it serves the same purpose, helping to ensure that your compensation keeps pace with inflation. For veterans who are receiving VA pension benefits, which are needs-based payments for wartime veterans with limited income, there's a different rate structure, but those rates also receive annual adjustments. One area where there has been genuine policy discussion involves expanding access to VA healthcare and benefits for veterans who were exposed to toxic substances during their service. The PACT Act, which was signed into law in 2022, significantly expanded healthcare and benefits for veterans exposed to burn pits and other toxins, and the implementation of that law is still ongoing, with more conditions being added to the presumptive list over time. Here's what you need to understand about how executive orders actually work in relation to these benefit programs. An executive order is essentially a directive from the president to federal agencies about how to implement and enforce existing laws. A president cannot use an executive order to appropriate money that Congress hasn't authorized, and cannot use an executive order to permanently change benefit amounts that are set by statute. What an executive order can do is direct agencies to prioritize certain actions, streamline processes, interpret existing regulations in particular ways, or implement programs more efficiently. For example, an executive order could direct the Social Security Administration to reduce wait times for disability determinations by hiring more administrative law judges or improving its case processing systems. An executive order could direct the VA to expedite claims processing for certain categories of veterans or to expand outreach to ensure eligible veterans are aware of their benefits. These are meaningful changes that can improve people's lives, but they're different from the kind of dramatic overnight increases in benefit amounts that sometimes get discussed in sensationalized headlines. The reality of benefit increases is much more mundane, but also more predictable than the wild swings that social media posts sometimes suggest. Every year, around October, the Social Security Administration announces the COLA for the following year based on the Consumer Price Index data from the third quarter. This announcement tells you exactly what percentage increase you'll see in your benefits starting the following January. The same process happens for SSI and for VA benefits, though the timing and exact methodology can vary slightly. These increases are automatic, meaning you don't need to apply for them or take any action to receive them. They're built into the system, and they happen whether there's a new president, a new Congress, or complete continuity in government. The system is designed to be stable and predictable because millions of Americans depend on these payments for their basic living expenses, and sudden, unpredictable changes would create chaos for people who are budgeting carefully and living on fixed incomes. What does vary from administration to administration is the emphasis on different aspects of these programs and the priorities for potential reforms. One administration might focus heavily on reducing improper payments and cracking down on fraud, which can sometimes result in more frequent continuing disability reviews and stricter enforcement of eligibility rules. Another administration might emphasize expanding access and reducing barriers, which could mean more lenient interpretation of medical evidence or broader acceptance of certain conditions as qualifying disabilities. These shifts in emphasis can have real effects on real people, but they typically unfold over months and years rather than happening overnight, and they're implemented through regulatory changes, agency guidance, and enforcement priorities rather than through sudden dramatic announcements. If you're currently receiving Social Security, SSI, or VA benefits, the most important thing you can do is stay informed through official sources rather than relying on secondhand information or viral social media posts. The Social Security Administration has a comprehensive website at ssa.gov where you can access your personal benefit information, check the status of any applications or appeals, and find accurate information about program rules and upcoming changes. The VA has a similar online presence at va.gov, where veterans can access their benefits information, file claims, and get answers to questions. These official sources are always going to be more reliable than forwarded emails or sensationalized YouTube thumbnails, and they're updated regularly to reflect any genuine changes in policy or procedure. Another critical point to understand is that benefit amounts are highly individualized based on your personal work history, disability rating, income, assets, and other factors. When you see a headline saying that Social Security recipients are getting a raise, that's usually referring to the annual COLA, but the actual dollar amount of the increase varies for each person because it's a percentage increase applied to your existing benefit amount. Someone receiving a monthly benefit of $1,000 would see a smaller dollar increase than someone receiving $2,000 per month, even though the percentage increase is the same. This is why it's so important to check your own benefit information, rather than assuming that any general announcement applies to you in exactly the same way it applies to everyone else. For those of you who are approaching retirement age or considering applying for disability benefits, understanding how these programs work is crucial for making informed decisions about when to claim benefits and how to maximize your lifetime benefits. The decision about when to claim Social Security retirement benefits is one of the most important financial decisions you'll make, because claiming early results in permanently reduced benefits while delaying past your full retirement age results in increased benefits. There's no one-size-fits-all answer to when you should claim, because it depends on your health, your financial situation, your life expectancy, whether you're still working, and many other personal factors. What's important is making that decision based on accurate information about how the program actually works, rather than on rumors or misunderstandings about supposed changes that may or may not be real. The bottom line is this: your Social Security, SSI, and VA benefits are protected by law and administered through established processes that don't change dramatically overnight, regardless of who's in the White House. The annual COLA adjustments will continue to happen every year based on inflation data. Any significant changes to benefit amounts, eligibility rules, or program structure require congressional action through the normal legislative process. Executive orders and administrative actions can improve how programs are run and can expand access within existing legal frameworks, but they can't fundamentally rewrite the rules without congressional involvement. Stay informed through official sources, check your personal benefit information regularly through your online accounts with Social Security and the VA, and be skeptical of any claims about dramatic overnight changes that seem too good to be true. Your benefits are there, they're reliable, and understanding how they actually work is the best way to ensure you're getting everything you're entitled to while avoiding confusion and disappointment from misleading information.